will be recorded and live streamed by HDC. Members and officers must use the desk microphones in order for this to work. Only 2 microphones, in addition to the chairman's, can be on at the same time. Mobile phones, members and the public should switch off phones. Fire exits, chairman will point out the fire exit, so that way, and the meeting point is at the top end of Mill Hill car park. Can you? We're just stopping the echo. While we're just doing this, I'll get the committee to introduce themselves, starting with Councillor Graves. If you could introduce yourself.
Councillor Graves, Broughton Astley South End, Lear Ward.
Councillor Peter Chambers, Little Bowden Ward, Market Harborough. Okay.
Hello, Councillor Martin Surface, Lutterworth East Ward.
Ella Newman, Democratic Services Manager and Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Keith Thompson, Legal Services.
Nicola Parry, Development Management Team Leader.
Louise Finch, Development Management Team Leader.
Michaela Barton, Planning Info.
Joshua Worrell, Broughton Astley South and Lear.
Councillor Moder, Bilston and Tilton wards.
Peter Elliott, Thurmby and Houghton ward.
Councillor Neil Bannister, representing the Dun.
Councillor Simon Galton, Thurmby and Houghton ward.
Thank you, everybody. Now on to the agenda. We've got apologies of absence from Councillor Scott, and he doesn't have a replacement. Item 2, declarations of members' interests. Has anyone got any interests in this meeting? No, thank you, everyone. On to draft minutes of the Planning Committee. Has everyone read the draft minutes? And I have a proposer and a seconder if you agree with them. Councillor Bannister and Councillor Elliott proposed and second. Does everyone agree with the minutes? Okay, thanks, everybody. Item 4, referral up to Council by Planning Committee to consider any referrals under Part 3, Section 3.3.16 to 3.3.20 of the Council's Constitution. There are no referrals. So we're on to the planning applications that we've got to decide tonight. Our first application is on page 9 of your papers. It's Land at the Springs, Fleckney. 25/01033/OUT outline application for residential development of 30 dwellings. And our presenting officer is Nicola Parry. Nicola, would you like to carry on? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burrell. Good evening, members and members of the public. Okay, so the site consists of agricultural land on the western edge of Feckley, as you can see on the map before you. The site lies to the rear of a residential cul-de-sac known as the Springs, and to the west is Priest Meadow, another residential development. The site is not within a conservation area. St Nicholas's Church, a Grade 2 star listed building, lies to the east of the site. And there's also to the east of the site is the Golden Shield Public House, which is a non-designated heritage asset, which is listed in the neighbourhood plan. And I've got photos of both of those for you here. So this is St Nicholas's Church, the Grade 2 star listed building, and then this is the Golden Shield Public House. As you can see from that before you, there are several public rights of way that thread around the site, and in terms of land levels, they rise to the north and west of the site, presenting public views back towards the settlement edge and the site itself. And as you can see, it's observed that Fleckney has quite a large urban edge in this area, with dwellings conspicuous from the rural landscape. And these are 2 photographs taken from public right of way 782 and a bit further back. Okay, so the proposal itself is to modify an existing access from Main Street and erect up to 30 dwellings, including 40% affordable units. Access is the only matter presently for determination. Appearance, landscaping, layout and scale are reserved matters. The applicant has submitted an indicative layout plan, which you can see before you, showing how the site could accommodate 30 dwellings. So I'll just show you some things here. So obviously this is where the SI access is proposed. There's an attenuation proposed here. There's a children's play area, pedestrian connections to the public right of way here and down here. There's also going to be an ecological buffer in this area here. And there's also some additional car parking spaces indicated here as well for wider users, either on Main Street or those that want to access the public right of way network. This is a more detailed plan of the proposed site access with Main Street. I've got some existing photos showing the access bell mouth and the greenery along the frontage. So this is the existing bell mouth here. You can see the greenery here. You can see the electricity pylons here, and you can see the access here looking north along Main Street, and you can see some parked cars and the terraced housing. These are views of where some of the houses are proposed to be built, taken from the public right of way. Again, you can see the existing development here of the Springs, and then just here is obviously Priest Meadow. This is looking northeast and back towards Main Street, again from the Bridle Way. This area here is where the attenuation basin is proposed in these two areas here. And this is looking southeast across the site again. So this is the Priest Meadow here, and then this is the Springs here and the site in question where the houses are proposed. Okay, so Fleckley is classed as a rural centre in the local plan, which is a sustainable location for new housing. The site is spatially close to the centre of Fleckley with its key shops, services and public transport links, and the map before you shows you where the site is and then the location of the services within the immediate vicinity, which are all accessible via both walking and cycling. The site lies mostly outside the limits of development of the settlement as set out in the Fleckley neighbourhood plan. This application has been assessed against the development plan policies and material planning considerations. As a starting point, there is strong support for the application because it would deliver up to 30 dwellings in a sustainable location at a time of 5-year supply shortfall. The application must be approved unless there is a strong reason for refusing the development proposed or the adverse impacts of approving the application would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Officers consider that given the current unmet housing needs of the district, the site represents a suitable location for an additional 30 dwellings. There is some limited harm to the proposal in the following ways: the loss of countryside and its intrinsic character and beauty, and the loss of the historic agrarian setting around the village, including ridge and furrow, evidence which plays a role in the setting of the listed church, which I showed you earlier. The development would cause minor, less than substantial harm to the setting of the designated heritage asset to which great weight has been attached. The public benefits of the proposal are judged to outweigh this harm. All technical matters have been reviewed and found to be satisfactory by consultees and officers. Local concerns about flooding are noted. And as you can see from the map before you, the site lies outside any fluvial flood risk zones. So this is the fluvial area here in the blue, and you can see the site is not affected at all. And then the aerial photograph, this is taken from the Environment Agency's mapping website. You can see the site is partly affected by surface water flooding, which is these areas here on the site, and then here as well. So the proposal would provide for the drainage needs of the development, as I showed you earlier, the attenuation basin that's been proposed, so that the new dwellings are not subject to flooding, and that flooding is not made worse off-site through the construction of, say, of the said attenuation basin. Further to this, the development proposes flood betterment measurements to improve and reduce existing flood issues which affect the site and locality, including the public rights of way. As you can see here, you can see the standing surface water on the public rights of way, and this is the site here, and obviously this is the public right of way, so you can see that surface water. The applicant is aware of a surface water flow route across the land to the south, which might be adding to the flows on Main Street. As you can see in this map here, this is the overland flows. And to reduce the volume of water running off this land, a depression will be provided as shown, which is in here, and a more zoomed in version here, which will be able to accommodate 984 cubic metres of water, which will offer a significant betterment during extreme events and preventing significant additional flows of surface water from entering Main Street. Local concerns about highway matters are also noted. Accessing the site using Main Street from the village centre is restricted at times. This is an existing issue. Whilst the development would lead to some additional traffic, it would not significantly exacerbate the situation. To conclude, the proposal is judged to represent sustainable development and officers recommend the application should be approved, subject to the suggested conditions and the completion of a legal agreement to secure the obligations as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. There are 3 speakers on this application. The first is Mr. Jeff Armstrong. If you'd like to come forward and switch on the microphone. I think you've been here before, haven't you? So you know
I have
you know the
indeed.
drill. You've got 3 minutes. You'll
Good
be
evening.
warned at 30 seconds and start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Manor Oak Homes. Firstly, I wish to welcome and endorse the recommendations made to members this evening in respect to my client's proposals for up to 30 new homes on the land at the Springs, Fleckney. Tonight's recommendation has been reached largely due to the consistent, positive, constructive discussion with your officers. It is important to note that there are no objections from any statutory consultee. This includes Severn Trent, Council's Heritage Officer, Environmental Health Officer, Council's 106 Officer, Council's Housing Officer, LLFA, the County Council in respect of Archaeology, Ecology, Education and the Highway Authority. Any comments made by objectors must be balanced against the advice from the experts advising the LPA. Your professional officers have followed the correct approach when considering planning applications when there is no 5-year housing land supply and have identified the harms and benefits of the scheme and then reached a conclusion based on the overall planning balance. This is set out in the committee report in which it confirms that the benefits clearly outweigh the harms. Oh, that's gone a bit funny. Okay. Rather than repeat the comprehensive committee report before you, I thought it would be more helpful to identify the key benefits of the scheme before you, namely the delivery of new homes at the right time in the right location. Members are obviously aware that there is an urgent need for both open market and affordable housing across the district due to the lack of 5-year housing land supply. It is therefore clear that further housing permissions in sustainable locations are required to overcome this deficit. Your planning officers have concluded that the proposed scheme would deliver all 3 elements of sustainable development, namely economic, social and environmental. As such, the proposed scheme is in accordance with the requirements of the NPPF. As I explained to you earlier, the site falls in flood zone 1 and has received a clean bill of health from the LLFA. Indeed, the LLFA and the applicant recognise that parts of Fleckney, including part of Main Street, has recently flooded and have consistently worked collaboratively together to provide a betterment in the form of the additional attenuation basin, which will arrest any existing surface water flow onto the Main Street and beyond. This will be secured by condition, I think that's condition 18. In terms of landscaping, the report confirms that there will be
30 seconds left.
no significant impact and the scheme will be well related. Your committee report also confirms that we comply with the local plan, policy GD2, and also the Fleckney neighbourhood plan, which allows for development outside of the settlement boundary in certain circumstances, such as lack of housing land supply. Infrastructure needs will all be met. The 106 contributions have all been agreed, and the timescales will be agreed to as part of a 106 agreement. On-site open space is in line with standards and B&G is in excess of the 10% required.
Thank you. That is your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions for Mr. Armstrong? No. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. David Parker from the Parish Council. You've got 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. Is that on?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm chairman of the Parish Council in Fleckney. Thank you for letting me speak. First thing to say is I'm sure you're aware that we have a new emerging neighbourhood plan that has gone to council ready, and we're sure that you understand that it allocates sustainable housing sites that significantly exceed the housing numbers required for the 5-year plan. This is not one of those sites that we have looked at and approved. So we have approved sites on the northern side of the Fleckney, and those numbers come to over 300 houses. This is not one of those sites, first of all. So that, I think, needs to be taken into account. Secondly, I think you really need to look at the access. So access really is key to this site, and one of the reasons that we as the parish council threw it out without even taking it into account its other locality and processes, because it goes straight onto Main Street. Main Street is the oldest street in Fleckney. It is a very narrow street. We already have significant numbers of accidents down that road, not always reported, unfortunately. But a lot of the time that street is closed due to vans stopping to go to houses. So Amazon vans stop the flow of traffic because one van stops the traffic all the way down that street. It really is a very dangerous, narrow street for us to access. So we would never approve any sites, and we haven't, any sites that access onto High Street. On top of that, High Street leads on to Main Street in Fleckney, and if you know Fleckney, then you know that there's a terrible corner on Main Street that leads into our main shopping street, if you can call it that, where the pavements are less than adequate, in fact less than the standards required by Leicestershire County Council, and you cannot get a pram and a person past on each of those pavements. These 30 houses, which will impact the village, because that's where the main shops are. Sorry. Okay, thank you. So I think from a access point of view, this really is a terrible place to put a site. Add on to that the fact that we have already allocated housing in our neighbourhood plan, which is being reviewed by council as we speak, and therefore this should be thrown out on those accounts, if not anything else. Add to that this site is called The Springs for a reason. That field that we've just seen is actually absolutely literally full of springs, and those springs go underground, which is why you don't see them on the surface.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Parker? Councillor Sarfas?
Hello. You say that the road issue there may be an issue, but there's nothing back from highways to say that there's any issues.
And I think that's probably because highways tend to look at the opening and rather the whole. So if you look at the way that road then follows down into the older centre of the village, past the church with very, very narrow pavements, onto that high street junction that is very, very narrow. And what highways do is only really look at the openings and the highway entrances. And I think that's been missed significantly on this.
Councillor Galton?
Yes, could you just clarify where you are with your review of your neighbourhood plan?
So it's been passed to the planning officer, I've forgot his name now.
Matt Bills.
Matt Bills. So Matt Bills has it now. It's ready to come back to us, and then we'll put in our one.
But it hasn't been examined yet.
It's not been examined.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The allocated housing follow the allocation that is in the local plan, but also we've added extras to that. So we've got another 150 houses on top of that as allocated within our neighbourhood plan that will deliver well and above the requirements of the council over the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is Councillor Johnny Austin, who is the ward member and who will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Start when you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening,
You'll be
everyone.
given a 30-second warning. Carry on.
Thank you. As you just heard from Dave Parker, the chairman of the parish council, they've worked very hard to try and have a common sense approach to development in and around Fleckney, purely because Fleckney is a very small village. The infrastructure there is already at its hardest to maintain what's already being developed there, and there are more things to be developed. We've just literally in the last 3 months agreed the David Wilson estate right at the top of Fletney on the northern side. We're looking at the new estate to the right of that, which will join up the Leicester Road. And then we've also had the southern estate and Tigers Way, which has also been built by Persimmon. So in total, I think what the parish council have actually done is they've took a sensible approach, realising that Fletney, it does have to have development and it is going to need to deliver on those numbers, and it has already delivered on those numbers. So this actual proposed development is additional to anything else that is actually required. And as David also said, it's called the Springs for a reason. There are natural springs under that ground which run all the way northwards right up to the top of the Kilby Road. Now, there's been enormous flooding, not just at the bottom, but all the way down on that side of properties. In fact, you remember a case where a couple were looking to have their property given a C3 status in Mousley because they'd had to move out of the property on Thornby because it had been flooded twice in 18 months and they couldn't live in it with a family. So this is not a simple matter of brushing it away and saying, well, we've had assurances from AFRL that there's no problem with this, that and the other. We know there's an issue with it. It's proven that there's an issue with it, and this site is not necessary to deliver on the houses that Fletney has already agreed that they will, and over above what's needed. So I would ask all of you to actually think very carefully, even in your own situations, you have the same issues that we have in Fletney with your own villages and towns, and I would ask you to look on it unfavourably and not subject the residents of Fletney to more people, more vehicles and more opportunities for there to be issues in and around the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions? No? Oh, Councillor James.
Yes, Councillor Oster. Yeah, Johnny, one point that hasn't been mentioned, I think, at the moment is the parking in the village. From personal experience, it's very difficult. It might be okay in the co-op, but you can't get in there. There's nowhere else.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you, and obviously this development will increase some of the parking problems, perhaps. Could you give me a comment on the parking in the centre of the village? I know it's a small centre and
there is very limited parking in the centre of Fletney. The co-op does have a car park which will house somewhere in the region of about 20 vehicles. There is also a smaller car park next to the Baptist Church, which is right on the main street running through. That houses approximately 14 cars. That's it. But however, what the local clinical medical group have done is they've made Fletney's small medical centre the centre for Leicestershire County Council maternity. And so now there is a massive influx of cars coming into village to use that maternity. It's the only one that they can use in Leicestershire. That's where it's been allocated. So suddenly the car parks which used to have available spots are no longer available. They're taken up permanently throughout the day. And when you have rush hour traffic and you've got kids going to school and people going to work and coming in again, the road on Main Street is so narrow, you've only got to get one van parked up on the side and it stops the traffic for the whole rest of the community.
Thank you, Johnny.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else? Councillor Sarfas.
You're talking about the water issue, and you've obviously read what they've said about regarding that, and obviously the people in the community are concerned regarding the roads, parking and water.
Yeah.
Would you think then that those issues need to be re-looked at, even though they have been accepted through the planning officers?
Very much so.
Legal advice.
Very much so. I believe that what's been stated here today is actually dubbing down on what the actual real issues are with that area of the village. That side of the village where the natural springs are, There used to be a big forge smelting plant in Fletney. It was famous for it. And they used to use those natural springs for the forge, for doing the working. Now, you can imagine that that requires a lot of water to run a forge. And they were quite easily operating with that land being the natural springs. Soon as you start introducing infrastructure into that natural spring, the water's got to go somewhere. And unfortunately, it goes straight into the houses of the people, not only in the town centre, or the village centre, but also up going northwards as well, towards where the new estates are going to be built as well. So not only is there an issue with the existing spring water going somewhere, but then we're going to have an issue with more water coming down from the top.
Okay, thank you. Is it another question? Okay.
So how much flooding in the last 2 years has Fletney had?
To my knowledge, there's been at least 2 lots of flooding into the land south of Kilby Road, into the back of which runs down into Priest Meadow, where this proposed development is to be situated. And as I say, you'll be aware of the planning application from the people who had to move out of there. But also in the last year, there's been 2 major flooding incidents in the main street in the centre of the village, where that road has become impassable because of flood water, because of flood running. Because there is the river which also runs a brook which runs along, and that fills up very, very quickly because of these natural spring waters. So that I think it needs to be looked at a lot more than what's being told to you here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's the end of our speakers, so it's open to the committee. Who wants to start? Anyone? Councillor Graves?
Yeah, just on that point, could I please ask the officers about this, because we've been in this position as a committee before, and we hear about, you know, pretty bad consequences, normally flooding affecting neighbouring properties, but I notice it's been recommended for approval, so there's a mismatch here. Could I just have an officer explain what they've done with the receipt of the evidence of flooding, whether it's and it seems to be water runoff rather than a water course, but what did they do? How did they assess that, and how have they sort of overturned that to come up with an approval? Thank you.
Adrian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm looking what's set out in the report, page 55 of the planning report. So if you have the same page numbers, flooding and drainage, it starts to talk about that with reference to the lead local flood authority, which effectively is the organisation that, as decision makers, we rely on as a statutory party. We don't have to accept what they say, but if we go against it, we've got to have good reasons. And you can see from this report that they've looked at the submissions, and there has been some to and fro which is set out within the report, including that the officers have reported to the flood authority the local concerns, such as you've heard tonight. So you can see within the report that set out the lead local authority representations. There's been some to and fro, that they've looked at the concerns, and you'll see it's in italics within the report. They've concluded, and there's mention of the potential betterment as well, and they conclude that there's acceptable drainage scheme to this site. And we, you know, no one's minimising what people have said and what people have experienced in Fletney, but for this particular proposal, the flood authority has been through it quite thoroughly, and we have no basis, as the planning authority will say, to dispute their conclusions, their expert conclusions. I don't know if Nick wants to add anything to that.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Graves?
Yes, I'm just reading page 57 in particular, but it does seem to satisfy me. Thank you.
Councillor Salfas?
There does seem to be, from what they're saying regarding parking issues, and obviously with highways, the communication with highways is not always great, because highways don't always listen, and that's their reputation, I'm afraid to say. But is there a parking issue here? Where these houses are going to be built, people are saying that live there that there is going to be a parking issue. So is there going to be a parking issue?
In terms of the development itself, no, because the indicative layout shows that all the houses will have their own off-street parking. So they won't be added to actual Main Street. And the indicative layout is also proposing potentially 8 parking spaces for wider public use, whether that be from people that own properties on Main Street or those that want to potentially use the public rights of way. So in terms of the development itself, no.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Just to try and get some definitions correct, I think, is this application within the present local plan? Is it a speculative development? And is it in the proposed local plan that hasn't been adopted yet? Can Nicola help me with that, please?
It's a speculative development. It's outside the limits of development. The limits development obviously includes this section of access, but the wider development here is outside the limits of development as currently shown in the Fleckney neighbourhood plan. Officers obviously have assessed the proposal against local plan policy GD2 and considers that it complies. And we've also assessed it in terms of the material planning considerations, one being the fact that the council hasn't got a 5-year land supply, that Fleckney is a sustainable rural centre and it's a suitable location for housing.
Okay, thank you. Adrian?
Yeah, if I may just add to the neighbourhood plan, which was mentioned, there's the existing neighbourhood plan, which is 5 years old in a few days, actually, when you look at the dates. But paragraph 5.3 of the planning report you've got talks about, I'll call it the emerging neighbourhood plan, the Fleckney neighbourhood plan review. You've heard in questions that that's not yet reached examination stage. The planning committee will be very familiar when I refer to paragraph 49 of the National Planning Policy Framework that says the weight that you can give to an emerging local plan, usually in the context of our draft local plan, but it's very, very limited weight until really you get to an examination stage, at which point it starts to get tested. And then unfortunately, the Fleckney neighbourhood plan, which has been mentioned, hasn't got to that examination stage yet. So it would have very limited weight in making decisions.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, Councillor James?
I've got another one. Sorry, I left the. Yeah,
Have you got another question? Go on then.
Yeah, right. Looking through the section 106 contributions, forgive me if I've missed it, but I don't see a contribution for the medical facilities or the NHS. I think they're short of money, are they?
LRICB.
Do they have to bid or do we have to prompt them?
I think it's on page 86.
Page 86. Yeah, page 86.
Bottom.
There is an obligation for healthcare services.
Sorry, which page?
Page 86.
Oh,
They've requested £29,000.
my apologies if I've missed it. So can just right, okay. And what are they? Oh yeah, got you. Apologies for that then. So what are they going to spend it on? To ask.
Well, they'll be spending it within. I don't know if it's actually down here as to which one it's going to be spent in, but it will be spent obviously in the nearest facility within Fleckney.
It has to be.
As I understand, there is a health centre in
capital
Fleckney.
expenditure.
Sorry.
It has to be capital
we know that.
expenditure.
Yes.
It can't be a quarter of a doctor or anything like that. No.
So an extension to the facilities or.
Do we know what the capital expenditure would be, Nicola?
No, other than the request that they've asked for, which is the £29,000.
Normally.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moder?
Thank you, Chair. Did I hear Adrian say that the current neighbourhood plan still has 4 days left before reaching its 5-year review point? And if he did, does that mean that it's still valid and carries full legal weight in planning decisions until that point? I'm just trying to get my head around how that works.
Yes, I mentioned 5 years, and the I think it was in the paperwork actually. The May date of the Fleckney Neighbourhood Plan is 27th of May 2021. So, and the 5 years really is a phrase that comes from, I think it's paragraph 14 of the MPPF. You'll have heard that on many occasions. Certain circumstances apply where paragraph 14 kicks in. If you think it does, it's a 5-year window. So I've kind of mentioned that for transparency, that we're very, very close to that 5 year. But regardless of that, from the officer's point of view, it satisfies the GD2 local plan policy. And we don't identify a conflict in any event with the Fleckney neighbourhood plan. If you did differently, then maybe you'd be talking about paragraph 14 of 5 years. It's just an odd scenario because you're literally talking days before that 5 years passes.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm just sort of trying to get my head around that even though we're just talking days, it's still days within. It's still a valid point that, you know, we still have until that date before we dismiss it altogether. But that's just my consideration on that. The other thing is looking at the local flood authorities' comments on the water flow path and the surface water. I just feel that they are kind of covering their bases as well, where they say, you know, the developers also providing certain things, but they also say, you know, we welcome a betterment to the flood risk during significant rainfall events. And they believe that this is very important given the location's history of flooding nearby. I kind of feel that the locals, from what I hear, and also the ward councillor talks about things getting quite sort of severe when it does rain, and that's quite frequent, or seems to be becoming more frequent. I'm just a little bit worried about putting something here, and then we go down the route of it having such an adverse effect on its neighbours that it warrants their living conditions, you know, to be something that will affect not just them, but the whole town itself. And it goes back to what do we, you know, what do we want to see? What do we know now that will affect things going down the line into the future? And we do know that this exists. And we also know that insurers are a bugger to get sort of involved in this sort of thing. Never mind about once, but twice or 3 times. We've had it ourselves personally. I'm just kind of trying to bring the whole picture into play of houses. Yes, you know, it'd be great to sort of say yes to speculative development, but then is this the right place for it? Bearing in mind that we know what we know, you know, it's just a little bit tricky in my mind, but I'd like to hear what others have got to say about it as well. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bannister.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciated the site visit yesterday. It was good to walk around the site, and also good to actually drive along Main Street at the conclusion of the site visit. So I got a real feel for the constraints on the road, which are there. Unfortunately, there wasn't an Amazon driver van to stop my progress, but I understand those issues. I also understand the issues and the concerns regarding flooding. I appreciate that this is a development which is outside the limits of the village development as well. Balancing that, I read the technical advice from Highways, from the Flood Authority, noted the proposed conditions should consent be given. Appreciating this would deliver 30 dwellings and affordable homes at a point when the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. And that really, I think, is going to be the issue for this committee in making this decision this evening, that we come up against paragraph 11D of the NPPF, and we have to ask ourselves whether or not those concerns, those issues, the harm that this development may cause, do they significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits that come along with the supply of housing? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Yes, there is harm. Yes, there are concerns and issues, but that this bar is quite high. We have to show it is significant and demonstrably such that it outweighs the benefit of the proposal. That's what we have to think about. Given that high bar, I'm not sure that we've actually been able to overcome it in this application. I will listen to what others have to comment.
Councillor Elliott.
Yes, I was on the site visit yesterday and I drove along Main Street and it did look rather constrained to me. There's not much room there. But we have to go on what highways say, and highways say there's no problem. Also, the lead flood people say that there's no problem with the flooding, but it's a difficult one.
Councillor Graves.
Yes, I was just going to come back on the flooding because that's one of the key issues that residents and the ward member has raised. However, I mean, at the moment, I'm being reassured and I am satisfied. And unless the officers can demonstrate really residents' photos of, gardens full of water and all those sorts of things, then I'm not seeing the evidence to go against the statutory consultee here. And I know this is a big issue for the residents, but we are receiving this information that there is a betterment, there is an improvement of the flood risk during significant rainfall events. And that's the information I have to go on in front of me. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Anyone else? No? Anyone got anything else to say? No? Councillor Bannister?
It seems the comments from the committee have been exhausted. So I'll make a proposal for the committee to consider, and that is that we follow the recommendation within the report and approve the planning application.
Okay.
I look for a seconder.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grave, you're seconding it. Okay. If anyone's not got anything else to say, we'll hand it over to Democratic Services, who will run the vote. Thank you.
Just in line with the provisions in the council's constitution, we'll complete a recorded vote. So just to confirm, you are voting for, against, or abstaining the approval of this application. Councillor Bannister?
For.
Councillor Burrell?
For.
Councillor Elliott?
For.
Councillor Galton? Councillor Graves?
For.
Councillor James?
For.
Councillor Moder?
Against.
Councillor Sarfas?
Against.
Councillor Worrell?
Against.
So that is 6 for and 3 against approval of the application.
Okay, so that application is approved. Thank you, everybody. Our next application, everybody, is on page 91 of your papers. It's 25/01051/FUL, Dunmar Stables, Saddington Road, Smeaton, Westerby. Erection of one temporary rural workers dwelling. And the presenting officer is Louise Fink.
Thank you, Chair. This item was considered at the last meeting, if you recall, and it was resolved to grant planning permission as recommended in your report. There are additional comments on your supplementary list. However, there was an error in the block plan showing the location of the temporary dwelling, hence the requirement for the item to be reported back. To recap, this is an equestrian site which has been developed with a large stable building to the front, together with associated access and other equestrian related buildings. The second slide shows the position of the temporary dwelling, so that's clearly highlighted on your screen now, and that's located behind existing equestrian buildings. I'm just highlighting here on the screen. This is the main entrance to the site, and these are the stable buildings. This is an elevation showing the proposed temporary dwelling, and the dimensions are shown in your report. It's quite a low dwelling, under 4 metres. This is the nature of the accommodation: 1 bedroom, kitchen, shower room, etc. There's some further photos taken within the site, and the position of the temporary accommodation is approximately where this horse lorry is here, behind the existing equestrian shelters. This is a further view looking in towards the site, so it's behind this structure here. This is a further view of the site from the road. And as you can see, there's quite a large entrance. There's quite a bit of screening to the road. These are a few further photos, but that one's probably the best. The council's independent agricultural advisor has assessed the updated business plan and considers the proposal to be policy compliant. It is emphasised that any consent is for a temporary 3-year period. The business will have to demonstrate that it is profitable and financially viable during this period, and if not, the temporary dwelling can be required to be removed. The position of the temporary structure is considered well located in relation to surveillance and is low key, and approval is recommended as previously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. Now we've got 3 speakers on this application. The first speaker is Mr. Mark Chapman. If you'd like to come forward. Switch on the microphone, and you've got 3 minutes. You'll be given a 30-second warning when you get close to the end, and start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
So I'm objecting to this application as a local resident for 2 reasons. The first is there's been a flawed financial viability assessment, and the second is there's an inaccurate block plan that's been submitted. Both of these have been pointed out to the planning, but they failed to rectify those. Planning consent at this site has been granted strictly for permitted equestrian rehabilitation, not breaking, training, but rehabilitation, serving a maximum of 15 horses. It explicitly excluded commercial riding, riding schools, livery, or other business uses. Reading Agricultural Consultants concluded initially that the applicant's business was not financially viable, specifically noting that their business plan included unapproved and unfunded expansion from 14 stables to 50 stables in 2025 and 60 in 2027. However, the provision of more information led Reading to accept that the business may be sustainable. This assessment was fundamentally flawed, as the information provided to them was not correct and related to activities outside of the permitted use. Within the statement given to members, they say there's an extra 10 additional stables across the road. On April the 15th, the owner of those stables confirmed to Harbour Planning that he is no longer renting those stables to Dunmar. These 10 additional stables accounted for a 70% increase in the business's capacity, and without them, the financial model is unviable. We think this is a fundamental flaw in the financial assessment that hasn't been made, that Reading haven't been made aware of. There are breaches of permitted use. The approved accounts submitted to Reading were for Dunmar Breaking and Dunmar Rehabilitation. These companies are not part of the same group, yet submitted identical accounts, and this was picked up by Reading. It is impossible for two separate entities to operate this way unless the same business is being run on the same site and revenue costs are divided equally. To be fair, the applicant does not hide this, as the Facebook page for
You
Dunmar
have 20
Stables
seconds left.
says that it specialises in breaking and producing young horses. So we have unauthorised operations and we have non-compliance. I would also say the block plan is not accurate. It does not include a large wooden structure that has been built, and you can clearly see from the photos. Whilst there is permission for a normal menage on a different part of the site, we believe this to be a jump pen. We say believe, as it is about 120 metres squared and is surrounded by 15-foot high vertical wooden struts, so you can't see
Thank you. That
inside.
is your 3 minutes.
An unauthorised eyesore, strangely omitted from the
Thank you
block
very
plan.
much. Councillor Graves, you've got a question?
Yes, it's just regarding the accounts. Could you just explain the source of that information that you've obtained? Is it, for example, Companies House?
Company's House.
Okay. And could you also just explain the source of the requirement to your mind? Yes, sorry, microphone's on. The requirement that there's an authorised use and an unauthorised use. To your understanding, is it prior planning applications? And also to your understanding, have there been any enforcement actions as a result?
There have been many requests for enforcement action. The original application was for rehabilitation and excluded other uses. So that was the permitted use for 15 horses. So there was never any mention of breaking, training, or other uses. It was purely for rehabilitation. And the requirement for a temporary workers' dwelling is based on the fact that they are rehabilitating horses.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Elliott?
Just to be clear, exactly how many businesses are being run from this site?
Well, I can't answer that with any certainty. Certainly 3 financial statements were provided to Reading, one for Dunmar Breaking, one for rehabilitation, and then one for Anne Mackley, who is making the application, trading as Dunmar Stables. But as Reading say in their report, the business for that wasn't specified, it wasn't provided to them. So we don't know what that does.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Gillian Carpenter from the Parish Council. You've got 3 minutes and you'll be given a 30-second warning and start when you're ready. Thank you.
Madam Chair and councillors, thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Parish Council. Development in the countryside is strictly controlled. A temporary rural workers' dwelling is an exception, but it has strict requirements, including the need to show a viable business. According to Reading Agricultural Consultants, RAC, the applicants have submitted accounts for 3 businesses: Dunmar Rehabilitation Limited, Dunmar Breaking Limited, and Anne Mackley trading as Dunmar Stables. Questions: are all of these businesses being run at Dunmar Stables? And if so, are they all compliant with the planning permission for business use? In permissions given to Dunmar Stables, it states, the development hereby permitted shall be used for the permitted equestrian rehabilitation use only, and serve a maximum of 15 horses only, and not for any commercial riding, riding school, livery, or other business use. This is to safeguard the residential amenities of the locality and the character and appearance of the area, and the safety of persons and vehicles using the adjoining highway, having regard to local planning policies GD3, GD8, and the NPPF. To quote its first report, RAC considers that the rehabilitation use of horses on the site complies with the two conditions. However, the breaking and training of horses would not be compliant with the conditions. In its second report, it states the equine services provided or invoiced for by Anne Mackley, trading as Dunmar Stables, are unknown, and the accounts also include a rental receivable in other operating income. There is considerable doubt that two of the businesses are compliant with the permitted use. If they are not fully compliant, then their accounts cannot be used in the assessment to determine financial viability. This is clearly a matter for the LPA to establish without any doubt prior to sending information to their consultants for analysis. Has this matter been overlooked? Planning permissions and their conditions have so far failed to control development on this site. There are permanent structures that do not have any planning permission. Field shelters and hard standing that have been erected obstructing the public right-of-way, Z89.
You have 30 seconds.
Unresolved as the retrospective planning application is now withdrawn. A large jump pen has been constructed but is not shown on any plans. Additionally, the siting of the menage is not in accordance with approved plans, and the stables were not built as shown in approved plans, requiring variation. The local planning authority can have no confidence that the permitted development will be carried out as approved and that conditions attached will be complied with. The rapid expansion of the business and the unregulated development are of considerable concern to the parish council.
Thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions? Councillor Galton.
Yes, thank you. In your written submission to the application and consultation, you refer to the Localism Act. I'll ask the officers for some advice later, but you say that we have the ability not to determine the application whilst enforcement action is taking place. Do you just want to expand on why you think that's the case?
Well, I believe that to be the case. I'm not entirely confident that that is the case, but I think enforcement matters, particularly as these enforcement matters are pertinent to the applicant's business. The applicant has these structures there to run their business. The enforcement matter, from our point of view, we're particularly concerned about the obstruction of the public right-of-way, for example. The other thing is that the structures that are built over the public right-of-way are going to be are the structures that are claimed to be able to mitigate the impact of the temporary rural workers dwelling. Well, they have no planning permission. So I think they should be for consideration here. Those structures may not be allowed to remain. Thank you.
Councillor Graves.
Yes, thank you. Could I just ask you for a sort of brief summary? As a member of the committee, I'm looking at the map. This is why my phone is out. I'm not texting or anything. And it obviously is a bit of a way out of the main housing area.
It is.
But it is causing a number of residents concerns.
I think it is, yes.
Because could you just outline briefly in just a sentence or two the main concern of residents?
I think there's various concerns. Obviously, that this has expanded very rapidly in recent years. The land was sold in 2022 and with just 4 stables, and this the 4 applications we now have 14 stables, and it's become a significant business. And these structures have been built over open pasture land. And I think certainly the obstruction of the public right-of-way means that people are not going to be able to, they may be able to get round the buildings, but the field shelters and the hard standing for the field shelters are across the public right-of-way. So I think visitors to the country to walk on the footpath and residents are going to be put off using that public right-of-way by the structures that are there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is the ward member, Councillor Phil King, who's got 5 minutes. You know the drill.
Yeah, I do.
Carry on when you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Obviously, you've just heard from Mark and Jill. Sorry, I'm forgetting. Sorry, it's all been a long day, and you've heard some of the reasons why they and also myself, as one of the ward members, believe this application should be refused. Now, there are quite a number of inconsistencies with the information that's in the report that the applicants have supplied, and it's kind of it's quite difficult to get your head around. So first of all, if we just look at the accounts that are in the public domain or on Companies House, and what we've got is two companies with identical accounts, identical amounts. Now, in my understanding, I'm not an accountant, but the chances of that actually happening, I would say, are very, very low, if at all. So there is a degree of questionable financial information, I would suggest to members, that has been supplied by the applicants. There's also three companies that the agricultural consultants say the information was supplied, but actually the site only has permission for rehabilitation of horses. It doesn't have, and the reason why this is important is if you're rehabilitating horses, you tend to be there on site. If you're breaking and training horses, you tend to have to take them off site. Now, this is a country road with I think a 50 or 60 mile an hour. It's just past the 40 mile an hour delimiting, and it's the back road to Saddington. So people do, and let's not be beat around the bush, they put their foot down on this road. There's no speed cameras. It's a rural country road, and I'm very concerned about that. Second, just to talk about some of the more technical things. So, this is meant to be an exceptional, exception thing. So has the test for exceptions been met? So interesting, you had that picture on screen of the horse box. Now that's currently where the applicants are actually living. They don't live in Newton Harcourts. They haven't done for quite some time. The property owner's written to me about that. That's just not correct. They're currently living on site. Recently, in the last couple of weeks, an extra caravan has been moved on site from across the road, which I believe has their stable worker in. So there's currently 3 people living and working on site already. And this is an application for what? 1 person to live in? I just think the whole thing is not stacking up here. There's a lot of misinformation. Of course, no one's disputing that horses need care and that all of that. But before I came out to the meeting this evening, I checked on Rightmove. Within the village of Smeaton Westerby itself, there are 5 properties actually available for sale. Obviously, some of them are quite expensive. But if we look within a mile radius of Smeaton Westerby, there are 147 properties for sale. The report says there's no suitable properties available. Well, if we're just looking at 1-bedroom properties, within a half-mile radius, there are 5 properties currently on the open market for sale. Therefore, that statement is inaccurate. There are suitable properties available for 1 person to live in within a half-mile radius. Therefore, that is not accurate. So in my view, there is no need for either any form of accommodation on this site, based on the fact that the only permitted use of this site is for rehabilitation of horses, which, if that's the only business that's actually legally allowed to operate on this site, there isn't any need for anyone to be on there. Now, most modern businesses, agricultural businesses, operate without permanent residential accommodation on site. They use modern monitoring systems, CCTV, folding alarms, remote sensors, and they have staff living nearby, as I've already mentioned. It's quite a common thing, common practice to use. This is a Trojan horse, excuse the pun, not intended. This is a Trojan horse application. So the applicant can then later on then say, well, we want to now apply for permanent residence on site. Absolutely no need. And I think the fact that there are a number of outstanding enforcement issues, there's a flagrant disregard for the planning rules and all of that, and the applicant is just not demonstrating their commitment to that. So overall, members, I think you should refuse this application. I know you didn't last month, but then the information in the pack wasn't correct. So that's why we're here again. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to rethink this, and this time you'll actually do the right thing and reject this. And if you feel that more information is required and to clear up all these ambiguous points, then maybe you do defer it instead, so we can actually get to the bottom of this inaccurate information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Has anyone got any questions? Councillor Graves?
Yeah, thank you. As a ward member who clearly knows a lot about this application, can I just ask for your sort of current knowledge or status of this key issue for me? Because I've been looking at the Companies House accounts and I can see that there are minor differences, but there are many, many similarities. So yes, I'm on Companies House virtually every day, so I whipped through the accounts while a couple of speakers were speaking. What is your current understanding of this issue of breaking, which appears to be taking place, and the lack of the addressing of this other activity on site, because it doesn't appear to be approved? So how have we got to this situation? Have any applications gone in? Or is the site owner or occupier just not doing things?
Okay, so Councillor Graves, thanks for that question. So to answer the question, to the best of my knowledge, no application has been submitted for breaking or training horses, which is a completely separate activity to rehabilitation and supporting horses that need to recover and recuperate, whatever. That's a completely different thing. And therefore, what is going on at the moment, there is unpermitted activities going on site. There are outstanding planning enforcement actions which require to be implemented by our enforcement team, which haven't been yet, despite a number of reminders or requests for that to be enacted. And I have to be frank, it is incredibly disappointing that we haven't resolved this. And what we have got is, as I said earlier, ambiguous information, and I would call it ambiguous at best. And you can go away from that to a, downright falsehoods if you want me to say that, but I can't prove that. So I'll say it's ambiguous and not say that the other. But, that there is a range of understanding. The thing is, it's opaque. We cannot get clarity. And it is important, because if this business that has got permission, which is the breaking and rehabilitation, is not viable, then there's no need for temporary workers accommodation. But as I've already said, my understanding and the information I've been given, the horse box that's on the screen now, that is where the applicant is actually living. The two of them now with her partner, and there is also now a caravan that has been put on site, because the caravan was the other side of the road at the extra stables, which have now been rescinded. That use has been rescinded by that owner, and that the caravan was on that site, but they've ended that arrangement, and that's now back on this site. So there's 3 people, as I understand, living on this site.
Councillor Graves, carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Just as you were speaking, Councillor King, I've come up with a sentence that appears to be quoted by the RAC, the rural, I guess the R stands for rural, agricultural consultant, and they speak about the applicant's 3 equine businesses, ... facilities available on site. Were you aware that the RAC quotes 3 equine businesses?
I've read the report. I know what it says, but actually they only have, as I understand, and I'm sure officers will correct me if I've got this wrong, but I understand they only have consent for the rehabilitation business. The other businesses do not have permitted use on site, but the financial information has been used, as I understand, to justify the business viability of the rehabilitation business. Hence why there seems to be, shall we say, a large degree of similarity between the financial information covering 2 of the businesses, which are limited companies. The other one obviously isn't, and we haven't got that information. But that's how I see it. Thank you.
Councillor Sofas?
Hi, Councillor King. What other evidence do you think that we could have to what you're saying is completely.
Well, I think questions need to be asked of the applicants as to provide a proper breakdown of their of these businesses, and we just don't seem to have that. I mean, obviously, I can only access what's on Companies House, and it's we haven't got an opportunity. They're not here, so we can't ask them, and therefore it's quite difficult to understand.
Councillor Salfas.
What's the problem with enforcement at the moment?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to put your microphone off, Councillor Salfas? Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions? No? Thank you, Councillor King. Louise, do you want to say anything? There's been a lot of queries raised here, and it's quite confusing for the committee.
No, I appreciate that, and obviously officers have tried to get the information pertaining to the business and ask the applicants for that. So and pass that to the agricultural consultants for their comments. So it is a difficult one. In terms of the consents granted, they're on page 94, and the 23 consent 23-01427 says change of use from agricultural to equestrian rehabilitation and training with cross-country jumps, etc. But then there is, as speakers rightly say, condition on that, saying it's for horse rehabilitation. So it's what you classify as horse rehabilitation, I guess. But I mean, in terms of the sort of statement, it says different things that are taking place on the site. So, as I said, it's been difficult to get information on the application. So I don't know whether Adrian wants to add anything else. Financial.
Yes, I think if I may, accept there's a lot of information coming forward, and you've got different views, etc. Clearly, what the planning officers do in these circumstances, when we do go to the rural, I think it's RSC is actually Reading Agricultural Consultants, so pretty reputable, I would say. And it's not just been accepted their advice; it's been challenged. You've seen that. I don't think we'll get anywhere by going further with that. I doubt, from what we've heard, we'll ever reconcile some of these differences. To be absolutely honest, I think we've got to come to a view on what we've got, perhaps, because clearly there's upset and angst and anxiety. But the test isn't what's on Companies House, and the test isn't what enforcement action has or hasn't been taken. The test, we've got a plan application. It's effectively local plan policy GD4, and homing in, it's really B part 2. Is the business profitable, financially sound, and the prospect of remaining so? On the basis of advice that's been challenged with Readings, we think it has. You've heard other things, and you've got to come to a decision, I think, really.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Well, it's just a basic question, really. Is financial viability a planning matter? Perhaps Adrian can help a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the sense of, if you like, it's a bit of an exception here, housing in the countryside that's been proposed. And one of the exceptions is for a rural worker. And if there's a rural worker exception, is it a functional requirement? I think we've barely heard there's probably is a care of the horses, etc. No one's really debating that. And is it sustainable financially? And that's really why I've read out that policy. So within this context, it is relevant, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Moder?
Thanks, Chair. I think it's just a bit concerning that all these things have popped up on the site over the historic years, and to a point where the public right of way has been hindered, so people can't actually enjoy that side of things. And I'm just kind of wondering, if this is refused tonight, will all the other bits that seem to have been created disappear, or are they going to carry on accumulating these sort of bits on that site without planning permission? It just seems to be a little bit well, they're doing it anyway. You know, if they're moving caravans in and they're moving families in and there's 3 or 4 people living on site, you know, where are we drawing the line here? I'm not sure.
So, yeah, and I appreciate Councillor King, you've spoken and have a lot of local day-to-day knowledge of things as they evolve over the, you know, up to date. But ultimately, the upset and the angst we describe about enforcement, for example, I made a note when it was, you know, the public right of way being blocked. You know, I'd have to advise the committee, this application is on its merit. If there's a public right of way being blocked or other alleged breaches, that's a separate matter for the relevant authorities to deal with, right of way with the county council, for example. You know, we couldn't make a decision on this application because there are other things going on. We've got to decide this before us, you know, and the policy is GD4 viability and functional requirements.
Thank you, Adrian. No, I completely understand that. And I feel that, you know, you're up against it when these things happen. I just feel quite frustrated for the community. You know, I have a public right of way at the back of mine, and I wouldn't think of, you know, putting anything in its way because, well, I suppose you've got a moral compass of what you should and you shouldn't do. And I just feel that in this instance, if people are getting away with doing these things and we're not stopping them, we're not doing anything, why have they come to us today when they've not in the past? It just feels a little bit, you know, silly to me. But anyway, I'll hear what others say.
Thank you. Councillor Salfas.
My question is, obviously the planning have looked at this and said it's okay, but what happens if the actual people that own it are being dishonest and not telling the truth regarding this application? How does that affect the authority and the rules and regulations of planning?
You want to answer that, Adrian?
Well, we can't answer, you know, we can't speculate on that. I mean, but bear in mind the recommendation here is for a 3-year temporary consent. So if you did approve this application, there is another decision later down the line.
Councillor Graves, then Councillor James.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm glad this has come back because it shed more light on the issue. And as I say, I have looked at Companies House, and the planning officer who wrote the report right at the beginning acknowledges that there's backing of young horses. The RAC talks about 3 businesses. I've looked at 2 of them on Companies House. I feel somewhat taken advantage of this evening, Chair. I'm not happy. I'm a little bit angry, actually. We as councillors are not idiots. We're not stupid. I'm not here to be taken advantage of. I can see that there are potential serious issues of enforcement. I mean, we have the enforcement team leader here tonight, so we could get an update. I don't know if it's allowed in public session, but I've heard enough. I'm going to propose refusal of this application, Chair. I wonder if I have any support.
On what grounds?
Planning officers can assist me with that, but on the grounds that the application is not in accordance with the requirements of the requirements needed to make this financial in particular. I'm taken advantage of. I almost don't care what the grounds are. I trust the officers to write the grounds, but we have a vote. Everyone round this table, Chair, has a vote tonight. I think it's been clearly established that the applications and permissions have not been correctly dealt with on this site for some substantial period of time. And I, for one, am not having it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Have you got a supporter? Councillor James, did you want to?
Yeah, it's just
You just got a
also
question.
trying to sum this up. I mean, we've got an application here to do certain things, and if we approve it, they can do those certain things, and they can't do anything else. And if they try to do anything else, it is an enforcement issue, surely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. You want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, if we were going to refuse it, it's got to be on sound planning reasons. We can't just refuse it, as Councillor Graves suggests. So to try and cut through that, I think the issue for me, which I'm not clear about, is whether they're relying on operations which actually don't have planning permission to make it viable. I think that's the critical issue. We don't have that. I noticed one of the speakers said it may, that the Readings had said it may be viable. Well, I'm not sure whether that's correct, but that worries me a bit. So do we know if all the activities on site have planning permission? I think that's the first question. And then I asked a question to one of the speakers that there was a reference which I'd not heard before in the Localism Act, and perhaps we can get some advice on this, that on these sort of applications, if enforcement investigation was going on, which then might change that viability depending on what the outcome was, are we within our powers to say, well, we're not going to determine this temporary dwelling because the outcome of the enforcement may change the situation? It was suggested directly linked to the Localism Act, which I've not heard before. So perhaps we could have some advice on that. Thank you.
Adrian, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I'll tackle a few of those things, and I don't want to involve the enforcement team leader because she's here for another reason, and she probably would be very happy to talk about this, but I don't think that'd be correct because we don't want to make a planning decision based on enforcement. That's separate business. In terms of the Localism Act, I'm not familiar with that, but ultimately, and it's not a popular phrase, enforcement ultimately is a discretionary activity, so I don't think there will be a power there. And I'm not sure if Keith will know, but I don't think there's something in the Localism Act that says because there's enforcement investigation, you're stymied from a decision. I don't think that can be the case personally. I think in terms of the business, and you talk about the authorised uses, Louise has talked about that. It's a bit in there. As I said, I don't think we'll ever reconcile. There's different opinions going on here. When I looked at Reading Agricultural Consultants, for example, on the supplementary list, I think we repeated it. And ultimately, they say overall, they say it's compliant. I think it's very hard. I respect what they're saying now. I think it's very hard here to reconcile very competing differences of opinion. But going back to what Councillor Graves has talked about in the business, and he's homing in on the local plan policy, which I kept repeating. So if I GD4B2, so if I put some words into what Councillor Graves' development plan concern is, I think it's the proposal is conscious to harbour local plan policy GD4B2 as the business is not shown to be financially sound and by extension does not therefore have a clear prospect of remaining so, and it therefore does not represent sustainable development and planning permission should be refused. So that's capturing in planning words that viewpoint, I think.
Thank you, Adrian. Councillor Sarfas?
My question to the planning group is there any more information that's missing on our decision tonight? Can it be referred to make sure that we have got everything so that we can't make a confusing decision and we make the right decision?
Adrian?
So I think there has been a turn through, more than a turn through with the agricultural consultants, and I've said I just don't think we'll ever reconcile the strong differences there. What I read out in respect of Councillor Gray's concern, I think that's, if members feel it's not a going concern, what I read out is based on planning grounds. I think that would test if it was refused, that would be stand up to test it, appeal one way or the other. It wouldn't be irrelevance. It's plausible.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Elliott?
Yes, I don't think that I could pass this application unless we know more. I mean, as Councillor Graves said, we're looking fools in one respect. I mean, are these people trying to get round us, or it's just silly?
Have I got a seconder for Councillor Graves' proposal? Are you seconding it? To refuse the grounds that Adrian. Has anyone got anything else to say, or should we move? Oh, Councillor Bannister? Thank you.
Well, councillor Graves goes to the core of the issue here. That is this financially viable business? And if it isn't, then it can't proceed, and we should refuse. This council's gone to Reading Agricultural Consultants to advise. Their initial advice was that they didn't think it was a financially viable business. They asked for more information. They were satisfied on that additional information. It was viable, and I appreciate that there are concerns that have been expressed, but we've got a very experienced, long-standing, independent agricultural consultants advising the council of one thing. Have they come back to say they're still not satisfied, or is their opinion such that it's sufficient for the purposes of this committee to make a determination this evening? I appreciate that if approval is given, full financial information has to be provided in 3 years when the whole thing is reviewed. I note that it is an application for a 3-year temporary accommodation, and then it's subject to that full financial test. But do we know if RAC are in need of any further financial information, or is their advice now sufficient for us to rely on for any decisions this evening?
You want to reply, Adrian?
Yeah, so we've not been back to them on that particular topic. As I say, I think it would be difficult to reconcile the differences of opinion. I mean, I honed in on the supplementary paper, the very final sentence, overall RAC. So there's a kind of from my interpretation now, there's a balance in the judgment, and there probably always will be a balance in the judgment, and that's what they've come down on. Committee, officers will take their advice, but obviously Councillor Grace, for example, has interpreted and looked at it thoroughly and come to a different one. I think we've just got to come to a decision personally.
Thank you. Well, I think if that's the last of the comments, we'll move to the decision. I'll let the officers take over.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, you are voting for, against, or abstaining for the refusal of this application. So Councillor Bannister?
Against.
Councillor Burrell?
Against.
Councillor Elliott?
Against.
Councillor Galton? Councillor Graves?
For.
Councillor James?
Against.
Councillor Moder?
Against.
Councillor Sarfas?
Against.
Councillor Worrell?
Against. What seconded it?
No, that's it. Oh. Yeah,
But-
no, but I thought you were against. Sorry.
Against what?
I think
Against the
people have got
application.
confused
Yeah,
again,
that's
haven't
why
they?
you're voting for refusal. Not no.
Voting for refusal.
Can we,
Just to confirm, you were voting for, against, or abstaining for the refusal of the application. So you're for the refusal, are you, Councillor Sarfas? Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
I will change. That's
My
okay.
apologies.
Okay.
No problem. Is everyone else still okay with the answer that they gave? Lovely. Okay. So 2 and 7. Okay, so that is 2 for the refusal and 7 against the refusal. So you'll have to now vote on whether to approve or whether to defer the application. So you'll need a proposer and seconder for either of those, whatever you want to do.
Councillor Worrell is proposing approval. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Bannister is seconding approval. So shall we vote again? Thank you. Ella? No, for approval.
Yes, so you are voting now for, against, or abstaining the approval of this application. Councillor Bannister?
For.
Councillor Burrell?
For.
Councillor Elliott,
For.
Councillor Galton, Councillor Graves, Councillor James,
For.
Councillor Moder,
For.
Councillor Sarfas,
Against.
Councillor Worrell,
For.
so that is 7 for and 2 against.
Thank you. That application is approved. Thank you, everybody. Our final application is on page 109 of your papers. And it's 25/01056/OUT land at Station Road, North Kilworth. Outline application for 35 dwellings. And the presenting officer is Louise Finch again. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Chair. This is an outline application for up to 35 dwellings and associated open space, and was the subject of a member's site inspection yesterday. The first slide shows the site location in relation to North Kilworth, with the existing new residential development towards the front of the site. So this is a indicative master plan which shows existing new residential development at the front of the site, fronting onto Station Road, and the site behind it. And this part is to be used as public open space, attenuation, and a footpath linking onto Cranmar Lane. Some further photos looking into the site. So this is looking back towards the site. So this is the first part of it. And these are further views of the site. These are views which show an existing structure which is located towards the bottom of the site. That would obviously be removed and replaced by SUDs and the public open space, etc., as mentioned previously, and the link onto Cranmar Lane. This is Cranmar Lane and the area known as the Springs and the Bogs. So going back to the proposal, the best one. All the technical considerations have been satisfied as set out in your report, and the site itself is considered well related and of an appropriate scale in relation to the village. 40% affordable housing is proposed, and the relevant Section 106 requests are identified in your report. North Kilworth is identified as a sustainable village for development in the local plan, and the housing part of the site is within the limits to development. The site is included as part of a reserve site in the North Kilworth neighbourhood plan as set out in the report. Various buffers are provided. Just highlighting here, this is quite a substantial buffer of approximately 30 metres that's provided to existing residential properties. And as I said previously, we've got the link through here onto Cranmar Lane. So that would be for pedestrian cycles, and the village school's located up this end of the village. So that would mean that residents wouldn't have to go along the main road. There's substantial boundary treatments which are retained. And as I said, this will be an enhanced area to include the attenuation pond there. So basically, the principle of development's considered acceptable, and approval is recommended. There is one additional condition which would be recommended by officers, which isn't on your supplementary list, and that relates to levels. And there would also be a change to the trigger for the development of the pedestrian link. So we have 3 speakers, so I'll hand over to them.
Thank you, Louise. Thanks very much. Our first speaker is Rachel Root. you'd like to come forward, please. Thank you. You'd like to switch the microphone on. There's a little button in the middle.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
You've got 3 minutes and you'll be given a 30-second warning when you reach the
Yes,
end. So
thank you.
start when you're ready. Thank you.
Madam Chairman and councillors, I object to this application because of our inherited water supply, a gift of pure natural living resource. It is a heritage asset, and beyond recognition, thinking of destroying it is criminal. Erected in 1755 for collecting drinking water and hosting watercress beds, North Kilworth is a village defined by water, sustained by stewardship, and dependent on protection, and we are left to look after it for future generations. North Kilworth is not simply a rural settlement. It is a classic English spring-lined village founded and sustained by the unique groundwater system beneath it. I made representations of this to the issues and options in February 24 on this water. North Kilworth sits on a spring line, and surrounding land forms a recharge catchment, with the bogs being the release point. Any kind of footpath through this rare wetland nature reserve is a disaster, and it has a continuous flow of heavy rain and water down Cramner Lane. The footfall from this, plus pending applications and the surrounding area as a shortcut to this village, could easily be 1,000. The heritage assets are not mentioned, should and must be acknowledged and recognised. There is a real concern about highways and access, emergency, refuge, construction, and the cumulative effect on further vehicles should not be dismissed simply because each individual technical test is said to be acceptable. This application should never be about numbers for your housing supply. It's about our character, landscape, heritage, and the water environment. The village cannot absorb more growth. This is the wrong site, the wrong place, and the wrong time. This is an unsustainable village without basic facilities. It matters that residents have to rely on cars. We have limited unemployment, limited service, and limited public transport with huge drainage problems. So finally, I therefore ask members to reject the recommendation for approval. At the very least, this application should be deferred until drainage capacity, foul water impact, ecology protection, archaeological significance, highway safety, and cumulative village growth have been fully and independently resolved. Refusal is justified unless no significant harm is proved.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for our speaker? No, thank you. Our next speaker is Stuart Denton. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Denton, and you'll be given a 30-second warning when you near the end. Start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Stuart Dainton. I chair a local nature reserve that's adjacent to the development. I hope councillors will consider communities over corporates and oppose this development. The parish council opposed the development for good reason, and as do the nature reserve trustees. North Kilworth is a conservation village and it's already overdeveloped, going well beyond the neighbourhood plan that was issued previously. I'll come back to that later, but the sewage works has already backs up regularly with awful effects. Severn Trent may not have commented, but actually they obviously are complicit and conflicted because they receive the benefit from the development from houses that may become there. The area floods. The infrastructure proposed is actually well beyond what's needed, and the infrastructure mitigation is so poor. Who knows what's going to happen in the climate and nature emergency we face? So roadful design. The design itself is insufficient parking. There'll be parking on pavements. The reference to a bus service is, quite frankly, woeful. It's pointless for a bus service that is not fit for purpose. So cars become the default position for our community because it has doesn't have the jobs or the infrastructure around. The health service reference in the comments in the papers was absolutely ridiculous because you can't get an appointment already now at Wycliffe. It's already overcommitted, so anything else makes it worse. The cycle route goes straight through the nature reserve with the disruption that Rachel so eloquently outlined, but it would also impact the Rich Butterbur stand. As a nation, we do not need developments of this sort. It's been proven, and there's plenty of evidence to show that now. The developments of poor design, building on green space, and building on nature is not the answer. Nature is infrastructure in itself and needs to be protected. The village had a plan. It was produced and totally ignored. It was completely undermined, and therefore the volunteers that have produced these things in the past lost hope. So no wonder there's criticism in this report of not following the process. So you have to remember, it is parish councils that are volunteers that deliver these plans. So we all need to stop considering process in isolation. We need to start listening and supporting people in communities over company profits and start restoring and protecting nature rather than building on it. We need to ensure that we now have the courage to stand up for this. We are in a climate and nature crisis. North Kilworth is a conservation village. We need to start protecting spaces like this. I hope you will have the courage to stand up for nature and nature's infrastructure and oppose this development.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for our speaker? No, thank you very much. Our final speaker is Mr. Paul Johnson, who's the agent. You've got 6 minutes. You'll be given a 30-second warning as you approach the end, and start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Paul Johnson, Land and Planning Director of Francis Jackson Homes. I speak as agent and on behalf of the joint applicants. The application before you proposes up to 35 dwellings, including 40% affordable housing, on land south of Ridgeway in North Kilworth. The primary access is through our recently completed development of 9 dwellings to the immediate north. There are 2 main elements to this site, the northern field and the southern area, which formerly had large modern agricultural buildings upon it. The northern field, as confirmed by your officers, is located within the defined limits of development and is additionally a reserve site allocation within the adopted North Kilworth neighbourhood plan. Given the council's current lack of a demonstrable 5-year housing land supply, in such circumstances and given the allocated nature of the site, the principle of the proposed use in this location for residential built form is wholly accepted in planning policy terms. The indicative site layout demonstrates an appropriate mix and range of housing typologies and scales can be provided from 1 to 4 bed, with final details to be secured at reserve matters stage. The southern smaller portion of the site has previously been levelled and housed 2 large modern agricultural buildings, the remnants of which are clearly visible still on site. That area is to some extent unsightly, semi-derelict, and does not in any way play a positive role in the character or appearance of the local area or the conservation area, which also covers this bottom part of the site only. We are both aware of and extremely conscious of the value and sensitivities of both the bogs with its springs to the northwest and the Millennium Green and former moated site to the west. For the avoidance of doubt, there are no springs located within the application site itself. In line with best practice, it has only ever been our intention to preserve and enhance the setting of these close-by areas, this application proposing significant betterment over the current baseline situation on the ground of the application site. As encouraged and supported in both national and local policy, that southern part of the site will be cleared of the remnants of the former buildings and hard standings, the area renaturalised with extensive new planting to become an attractive, multifunctional green space with resultant landscape, amenity, ecological, biodiversity, drainage and visual benefits. A secondary foot and cycleway linkage is proposed through to Cranmer Lane. This additional connectivity and sustainability benefits will ensure that local foot and cycleway network is expanded. This also specifically addresses the point in the neighbourhood plan, page 50, which states the Elmcroft development, which is the adjacent site to ours, to the west, suffers in particular from poor pedestrian access to the heart of the village, and similar problems must be avoided in the future. The proposed link will benefit both the development itself and this historic situation also. The nature of the proposed renaturalised area, combined with its sensitive long-term management by either HDC or the parish council, will provide a guarantee as to the quality of the setting, ecological connectivity and landscape protection of the Millennium Green and the bogs for evermore. We consider this can only be seen as a form of planning gain over the current situation to the wider settings of these spaces and environments, and actually secures the enhancement for their future. We're delighted to see your own professional officers are recommending the application for approval on this basis, and we support their detailed assessment as set out in the committee papers. There's been extensive consultation and reconsultation with the key statutory consultees. Critically, subject to the proposed conditions, there are no objections to the proposals from the Environment Agency, LLFA, Historic England, Natural England, LCC Ecology, nor the county archaeologist. Severn Trent has confirmed via a pre-planning application inquiry with ourselves that there is appropriate capacity within the local sewerage network. Given the compliance with planning policy as set out in your officer's report, lack of consultee objection and lack of significant and demonstrable harm, we kindly request members support your officers and our application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone got any questions? Councillor Bannister?
Yes, hello. Thank you for your comments. You mentioned all the statutory consultees and they having no great objection to the application. And among those consultees were archaeology. Yes. But I read with quite interest about what archaeology have said about the site, the Northfield site, with the indications of a Roman settlement and all that. Are you satisfied that the proposed conditions will be able to be adhered to with regard to the further trench work that should be done before any development takes place?
Absolutely. We were obviously sent by officers the conditions, any pre-commencement conditions we have to agree to. So we have seen those conditions ahead of the committee report. As I said, we've developed the field to the north in the past and have always been required by county archaeology to undertake fairly extensive archaeological work ahead of development, which we did on the previous phases with extensive trial trenching. Moving into the current application site, we were required to undertake what they requested as predetermination archaeology. So we've already done trial trenching in the northern field and as much as we could in the southern extent. That information was undertaken on site and recorded and in accordance with a written scheme of investigation that was undertaken in accordance with LCC archaeology. Those details have gone back to them. On that basis, officers there were satisfied that there was nothing of significant national interest, and therefore they were happy to proceed on the basis that they could move forward with further work, but to be conditioned as part of the planning consent. So to answer your question, yes, we have seen the proposed conditions. We don't really have a choice, but yes, we are happy to undertake those works as we have done on previous phases. And obviously that will all be recorded and the information sent back to them for their review and further requirements as may be required, with that trenching as the next first phase.
Thanks very much. Councillor Sarfas?
On page 148, and it's 0.61.61, sorry, it talks about the amount of rain that there is, and it also talks about proposing for a pump station to be because of the risk of flooding. So what's your view on that, please?
So the site is located in flood zone 1, but on the surface water flood mapping, there is this very small element of the site where there is a slightly higher risk. On the indicative layout that's on the screen, there is a pumping station located broadly in that area. Now, obviously, that is an indicative layout only. So when it comes to reserve matters stage, we could either look to relocate that to an area where there isn't that flooding. But as I think the officer covers, actually with that type of flooding, that infrastructure is actually permissible in that location from a sequential test point of view. But as I say, it's certainly that layout and where that pumping station is sited is not fixed at this point. That will be for us to review in detail should we get the benefit of outline planning permission.
Thank you. Councillor Sarfas.
Surely there has to be, because there is saying that there is a risk, you as a developer have got to make sure with the authorities that this is, there is a plan in place.
Absolutely. And as I say, we undertake our obligations in that respect very seriously. Obviously, the key consultees have come back on this already. The LLFA have been consulted, have seen our flood risk assessment, and we know what they've said. They do not object to the application and the principle of what we're looking to propose, or what we're proposing here.
You've had your say, thank you. Are you happy now, Councillor Sarfas? You finished? One more, yeah.
But they're still saying that there's a high risk of flooding.
Sorry, can I just double check which section that is, just so that I can...
On page 148.661. Still saying in there that there's a risk. I'm not saying there's not a risk. I'm saying there's a risk. So you're saying in this.
I think Adrian can help out here.
Yeah, I think that paragraph 6.61 really sets out what we've heard, that there's no objection from the lead local flood authority. It talks about the foul water pumping station within an area of surface water flooding, but it goes on to say that that would effectively be permissible in any event, but ultimately it's subject to planning conditions if approved. Hope that's clarification. Hope that helps.
It's a bit vague, isn't it?
No, it's quite clear.
I mean, what's set out, not unusual, I don't think. So the flood authority say they don't raise objections. It's just been quite transparent that there's some surface water flooding, as fairly the speaker said. The pumping station could be within that area, but ultimately it's a matter of detail. But it's not that kind of infrastructure can go in that location in any event. That's what they're saying. So I think that's not unusual and that's reasonable, I think, to be fair.
Thank you. Can I just ask you about the cycle path?
Yes.
To Cranmer Road Lane. You've got a condition here, condition 21. This condition is quite detailed, but
Yes.
it doesn't actually suggest how wide the cycle path would be. So is that fluid, like the path?
It will be of an appropriate width to be accommodate safely cycles and pedestrians together. In various instances in this district and in other places, we have provided combined cycle and pedestrian paths. So off the top of my head, I can't give you an absolute figure, but it will be an appropriate width. It won't be a narrow path, but it equally won't be it's about context and appropriateness. It won't be a wide road. Certainly where there's absolutely no desire or intention to have any vehicular access down there. So it will be scaled, yes, to accommodate cyclists and pedestrians using it together.
So we walked along there and it was very wet. It had water running down both sides of it. How would you deal with that?
Well, again, the finer details of that your officers have proposed of a very detailed condition 21. Certain things that are required for us to provide to address that condition, certain things are stipulated within that condition. So we will refer that back to our own technical experts, be it drainage, engineering, ecologists if necessary, and put together a proposal to address that condition. Now, that will be done prior to development commencing as required by the planning condition.
It's got a lot of character, that little street and street road, whatever. And it would be a shame to really spoil it with a tarmac footpath. So
absolutely,
something to be very.
I agree with you entirely. We very much would take a manual for streets approach on that, where it's about place and context and movement, rather than trying to put in an over-engineered solution. In many instances, without trying to get to an answer right here, right now, I think you do need that manual for streets approach, where it's about context and appropriateness, rather than just say the easy thing is to put a huge carriageway in. As a developer with a lot of experience in your district, you know, we've built multiple sites in rural village locations, often very, very sensitive sites. You know, I'd like to think that we do have a track record of proving that we can be sensitive in such scenarios. So that would very much be our approach to addressing the requirements of that condition here.
I just thought I'd flag that up.
Completely
Make sure
understood.
you realise that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else got anything to say? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll open it up to the committee. Is anyone going to start us off? Councillor Graves?
Yeah, I noticed we've got no comment received from 7 Trent Water, and that is also mentioned in paragraph 6.58, which says that consultation with 7 Trent Water Authority did not elicit a response. As a result, capacity or technical issues cannot be confirmed. I don't think it's normal, is it, that they fail to respond? That does concern me, given the importance of all water-based issues, for them to just fail to reply. Could officers give you their opinion, please?
Any idea, Adrian?
You know, I can't say for sure. I don't think it's unusual. They don't always comment on applications. Would certainly, you know, we pursue the lead local authority. In terms of water supply, for example, there'd be a separate legislation in terms of right of connection, etc. So,
thank you. Councillor James, you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, 2 points on the section 106 contributions. I must have got the wrong application. I can't see a contribution here, unless I've missed it again, for medical contribution. Given the state of the medical centre in Coventry Road, I'm surprised there might not be one. So I wonder if Louise could give me a comment on that. And also looking at the open space maintenance, we've got a figure in here of £292,795.79. And presumably that's a commuted sum for how many years? My question. So it's medical facilities, and how many years on the open space management?
Adrian will respond.
so just certainly in terms of the medical facilities, sorry, there was an update on the supplementary papers. So it's actually on the supplementary papers as the NHS Keith kindly pointed out to me while Louise.
How much is that, Adrian?
33,880.
We don't know what that's for, presumably.
Oh, well, as
Do
per
we?
previous discussion, I think it would ultimately, if approved, there'll be a detail in the legal agreement, but I would expect it to go to a physical improvement.
Okay, thank you, Adrian.
The open space one, I've not got the figure in front. I'm not sure which you're referring to there, but then ultimately it would be a matter of detail, and it would effectively be comes forward for a potential for adoption. That will be a figure either that's in there or to be negotiated. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we've calculated a figure there, nearly 300,000. Do we know how many years that would fund?
Well, sorry, I'm just looking on the, I've not got the 300,000 figure. I've got different figures on the supplementary papers, so I don't know what the actual total to.
Okay.
They're not for maintenance. These are for actual contributions for provision rather than maintenance. So the maintenance would either be through a calculated figure over a period to be agreed or through a management company, I would expect.
Okay, okay, maybe.
Thank you,
In more
councillor.
detail. Okay.
Turned it off. Going back to what the water company have not said anything, I would like something back from the water company. It would be quite good for this application.
So we wouldn't be able to, I absolutely agree with what you said, but we've obviously not got the comments to report, so we can't give a guarantee. So, it's not in our hands to force them to say something. So I can't, make any promises on there. So I can't recommend that's a reason to delay a decision on the basis that, for example, the flood authority themselves say the scheme's acceptable.
Sorry, you've had your chance. Please be quiet. Please. Councillor Graves.
I'm not going to make a proposal, but I just want the committee to know that I'm not supporting this. I've heard some significant concerns. I can't necessarily put them into a planning reason, but I'm not happy with a number of aspects. I would be happy to agree to a deferral. I think there's several points that need to be sorted out. There are significant residents' objections to this. I'm not going to make a proposal, but I won't be supporting this application. But I would support a proposal to defer it.
Councillor Sarfas.
I still think that we should ask. There's no harm in asking the water board to make a comment. It may not be normal, but in this situation to make a decision over this sensitive issue over the water, that we could try, please.
I think they have already been asked, haven't they? But they neglected to reply.
There's no harm in asking again.
Anyone else got anything to say? I think this site is in the neighbourhood plan anyway, so it's had lots of research done into it for the neighbourhood plan, and I was in the Schlar as well. I assume it was. So it's been examined by Harborough District Council.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It's a reserve site in the neighbourhood plan, and it's within the limits of development that's set out within the in the paperwork. And getting to that stage, you would have anticipated it's been examined, therefore, and there's been some acceptance in principle.
But it is unusual that Water Board has not replied.
Councillor Galton.
Yeah, Chairman, just referring back to your question to the applicant in relation to paragraph 670, which talks about an area identified by Natural England and the cycleway pedestrian. Was that in connection? Does that relate to the planning condition that you were referring to? That the planning condition is attempt to address that issue being raised by Natural England, because it says that their comments remain outstanding, will be provided as an update if received. So is there a link between 670 and the proposed condition? Is it an attempt to ensure that that there is no damage done by the construction of the cycleway and pedestrian link?
Louise, can you answer that?
Yes, that's the intention. I think there's the conditions being updated slightly, but that was certainly the intention of that condition.
And do you know if that will satisfy Natural England concern? Through you, Chair.
Well, I think the details will satisfy it when they're received. So
we'd consult them when the condition comes in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bannister.
Yeah, just a question at this stage, because this is an outline planning application. Paragraph 660 in the report begins, given that no specific drainage elements are fixed at this stage. Does that mean that the drainage issues and the comments from Severn Trent must be available when the reserve matters are to be considered, should permission be granted on this application.
I mean, there's a wealth of drainage conditions on the application. It's just because they haven't actually asked for conditions. If you consult them, they'll probably say, well, I didn't ask for the condition. So we would be consulting the drainage people that have asked for the condition, primarily the LMFA.
So just to come back on that, the concern seems to be about foul rather than stormwater. Notwithstanding they haven't replied, are we covering that? I mean, we can't, it's been suggested through comments that there is already a problem with foul, and clearly we can't make them put that right through this, but we do need to make sure that this isn't going to make it any worse.
I mean, we could add a condition to the surface water condition saying that foul and surface water should be agreed. So that would be condition 9. You could update that if members saw fit. So basically, it would be foul and surface water scheme to be agreed, and then
I think that would be a good idea through you,
upon, including Severn Trent water.
Yeah, I assume that the village has its own sewage treatment works, does it? It's not on. It's not directly connected to. Okay.
Thank you. Please. Please. Anyone else got anything to say? Right. Well, if no one's got anything to say, I'll make a proposal to go with what the officer recommends to approve this application with the addition of the foul to condition 9 to make sure that foul water is covered as well as surface drainage water. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Bannister, are you prepared to second?
I am, Chair, and I want to say that I enjoyed the site visit yesterday. I drive through North Kilworth several times a week, and yesterday was the first occasion I had to go and visit the bogs, and I was so impressed with what I considered to be an absolute gem in that village, and that is something that really should be protected and enhanced. And to some extent, when I consider the proposals for that derelict piece of land where the farm buildings were, which are slabs of concrete, it's all overgrown. I think the agent referred to it as the southern part of the development. That will be enhanced, and that I think will add to the general feel of what the area around the bogs and the Millennium Green do offer.
So sorry, you're so mistaken.
Sorry, please be quiet. Please.
To get it through, now proper consultation, Severn Trent, it's an utter disgrace. I'm so sorry. This is so important. That
Please.
We've got our lives into looking after.
Please, will you let us do our job? Thank you.
Please, you didn't listen to what I was saying. You had.
We did listen. Please be quiet. We've got a proposal on the table. Carry on, Councillor Bannister.
Yes. I think the amendment to the condition to address that the foul issue is appropriate, and I'm glad that has been suggested. The council cannot demonstrate the 5-year housing supply. Paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged. I note this is a reserve area within the North Kilworth neighbourhood plan, and I think that I'd rather have the enhancement of that southern part than the dereliction, which I saw myself yesterday. So I am content to second your proposal, Chair, that we approve the application.
Thank you. Has anyone got anything else to say, or should we move to the vote? Move to the vote then. Carry on. Ella?
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, you're voting for, against, or abstaining for the approval of this application with the amendment to condition 9 included in Appendix A of the report. Councillor Bannister?
For approval.
Councillor Burrell?
For.
Councillor Elliott?
For.
Councillor Galton? Councillor Graves? Councillor James?
Against.
Councillor Moder?
For.
Councillor Sarfas?
Against.
Councillor Worrell?
Against.
So that is 5 in favour of approval and 4 against.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved. Thank you, everybody. We've got one final item on the agenda tonight, and that's the planning enforcement update from Michaela. So we'll just let the people go, and then you can give us your report. So that's on page 181 of your papers. Thank you, Michaela. If you'd like to carry on.
This is a shorter report than the last one I presented. This report spans a 3-month period, and I would intend to bring a 3-month report going forwards. It's between the 1st of December 25 and the 28th of February 26. The tables set out table 2, table 3 and table 4 give figures in terms of KPIs. As you can see, overall, we're hitting our KPIs. There's no backlog of cases. It details the enforcement notices have been served. Table 4 is actually a new addition, as requested by Councillor James at our last meeting. Basically sets out the split of planning enforcement cases into breaches. So that will be added going forward. I hope that's useful. The report also details the notices that were served within that 3-month period. 4 notices, 1 has been complied with already and 3 are in the process of being appealed. And finally, the planning compliance, 2 new sites added to the monitoring role there. Basically, that role is going well. It's been a useful addition for the team, and it reduces emails that come into the planning enforcement inbox and sort of frees up some of our time, and it also encourages better relationships with the developers by engaging with them early to make sure that the conditions of any permission are being complied with. So yeah, it's a relatively short report, and I'm sure we want to talk about Dunmore Stables, but if there's any other questions, feel free.
Michaela? Councillor Graves, you've got a question?
Dunbar Stables. Could you explain what's happening there? I mean, I was expecting to almost see it as a separate case here, you know, some sort of serious ongoing difficulty in establishing the truth of the site. What's happening?
So we have got a live enforcement case. It's not that we're not taking any enforcement action. It's just obviously there's been a number of planning applications in play. It's very rare that we would take enforcement action while there's an application to be determined, and that's the case with the residential use. Obviously, the application was coming to committee today, so we would definitely, I mean, yes, we are aware that there's residential use on site at the minute, but we would never have taken enforcement action while this application was pending.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but I think we're onto a specific different point with this one about the backing versus the rehabilitation and what's happening with the enforcement on that, because there's clearly evidence being passed to you, including some accounts on Companies House, which I have personally seen this evening, and they are near identical to the rehabilitation ones. To my mind, I'm sold that backing is taking place on that site, and a very good point has been made about the financial issue. I mean, the planning application may not have succeeded if enforcement had actually been a bit quicker and achieved a resolution. And our concerns as members is that we're passing planning applications maybe in a little bit of an enforcement void. I just feel taken advantage of as a member tonight because enforcement hasn't reached a conclusion. I mean, have you not had enough time? Has it only been a month or two? Because there's figures on Companies House, there's clear residence evidence. Have they refused access to site? What's been the hold up in actually establishing, yeah, there's backing going on here and it's not allowed?
Well, obviously, when there's been a breach, there's a lot of things that we need to take into account. So we carry out site visits. We can we've served a planning contravention notice. So again, it's just all the information that we receive from site visits from Louise in her dealings with the applicants. And then obviously we come to some sort of conclusion. But as I say, while there's all these applications in play, it's very rare that we would ever serve an enforcement notice. But now this one's been approved. There's another application due to be submitted for the field shelters. That was withdrawn because of the public right-of-way issue. Once that's been resolved, another application will be submitted.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just establish something? Are you saying you've held back on the issue of backing versus rehabilitation because planning applications have gone? Because I don't see those as being related. I see them as completely separate issues. And we've allowed ourselves potentially to get confused. And now we've allowed a planning application gone through. Maybe if enforcement hadn't had that confusion, it may not have gone through.
Adrian.
Yeah, if I just give a bit of an oversight, and obviously we don't get into too much detail. We're in live session here on a particular case, but I would say, you know, from the discussion, there's a lot of enforcement monitoring going on the site. We'll probably go forward now with a view on the residential bit. Some of the other matters you talk about, you know, is this ongoing tension and frustration. Some things may take place on sites without planning permission. It doesn't follow, you know, for example, when we're dealing with business, we're not going to rush in and slap enforcement action. We're going to consider the implications on a business. So it doesn't follow that if there's a breach of planning control that there will be an enforcement notice. We've got to take a reasonable approach, and particularly where there's businesses involved, we'll take a very reasonable considered approach. But we're not held off in terms of the residential use on that side, for example. Really what McLean's explaining is if someone's got a planning application, you've got to have an open mind. You can't predetermine that ordinarily by just pursuing enforcement for its own sake. They may have and as it happens on that particular case.
Sorry, sorry, this feels like a Westminster Select Committee. I really need to intervene because the enforcement team leader has basically given really strong indication that they've held off the backing versus rehabilitation accusations and all the evidence come in. They've held off because there are planning applications in place, but the planning applications don't relate to backing. The planning application relates to a key workers dwelling just for rehabilitation. And when I read the report, everything was just related to rehabilitation. And I'm really concerned that a mistake has been made and an unusual, potentially inexcusable concession has been made to a person who maybe sounds like there's multiple breaches of planning on an issue that doesn't relate to the planning application. Now, that's not an issue for planning. That unfortunately is an issue for enforcement. But I'm concerned that a mistake has been made here because the backing doesn't relate to the planning application as far as I can tell and as far as the information presented to me this evening. But I hear what you're saying, Adrian, completely
No,
about
if I can just clarify in terms of allegations and mistakes and things. There's an enforcement investigation on certain things. I wouldn't say things have been concluded one way or another. So I think it's a little bit harsh to say mistake, but respect you've got your opinion. In terms of the matter that was before us tonight, that's an enforcement investigation in terms of dwellings, and that will be pursued separately now. And now we've had a conclusion to that particular decision. So I don't personally see any mistake. I just see that there's been a lot of enforcement investigation ongoing, and it steps forward steadily, basically.
Okay, thank you. Councillor James, did you want to say something?
Yes, please, Chair. I do appreciate reports like this, and it's got lots of data in, but I'm going to try again for the third time. I really would appreciate information in terms of what the enforcement issues are. For example, I'd like to know whether enforcement is taking place on new developments, existing developments, whether it's trees or whether it's fencing or whether it's signs, because I think that's quite important information. We would better understand, how enforcement is operating and the sort of issues we're dealing with. I'd really like to see that information. I'd find that quite helpful.
So table 4 breaks
So
down.
whether Michaela can give me a comment on that, or Adrian.
And say, if you look at
Appreciate.
page 185 at the top, have you looked at that table?
Table 4 splits down the breach categories. So it states unauthorised development, changes of use, works to trees,
So you-
hedgerows.
Yeah,
what you're
what
talking
I'm
about.
really interested in is particularly whether it's new development, because I get lots of issues on new development. I don't know whether they end up in this system, but whether it's new development or exactly what it is. There is helpful information there. I accept that. I'd particularly like to know whether it's existing developments and whether it's new developments. Whether that can be done, I don't know.
Let me have a think how I can work that out. I'll try to do it for next time.
Will we try and do that?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's fine. Thank you very much. We do a deal on that then. Thank you.
Councillor Galton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I thank the office for their reports. There's a lot of information in here, and very useful to get updates on particular cases that I know or been involved in. Could I just ask regarding this really important appeal on the station cottages at East Norton? Because this is an access, unauthorised access directly onto the A47, extremely fast section of road where people overtake, and the thought of these vehicles pulling in and out of there, and for once highways were very clear that this was not acceptable. So I see we've now got an appeal. Can I just clarify highways are supporting us in this?
Yes, they have. They've supported. There's a planning appeal as well in conjunction with the enforcement appeal, and highways have provided their comments for that as well.
That's really positive, Chair, because obviously we need their involvement in this. I'm not going to go on to Michaela about 67 Uppingham Road, Houghton, but I'm going to have to write to you on this. I'm really sorry, but all these cars have come back on the site last week. I will write to you separately. Won't go into it tonight.
We are keeping an eye on it.
Okay, yeah, it's just we have been monitoring it, but I've not seen it personally. But
Take a picture.
yeah, thank you for the good news.
I'm not saying they're for sale, but they are there. Back up the fire.
Thank you.
Has anyone else got anything to say?
My only thing is just
Councillor Worrell, would you like to put your microphone on? Please.
it's not in there, not it outlined the specific gate or anything, but the unauthorised traveller site in Claybrook.
Yes.
Is there any update of what's going on with that?
So a further application has been submitted.
Right.
Just recently over the course of the last week to try and overcome some of the reasons for refusal. So that'll just be heard in the normal way.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then actually, sorry, no, I have got a
Carry on.
And
Put your microphone on, yeah. So we record you.
again, so as you said previously, so because another planning application is going, nothing else will carry on. till that point.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on site weekly, monitor it. So I ensure that they are complying with the terms of the injunction.
Right. Nice.
Thank you. No one else? No? Well, I'll say thank you very much for your very interesting report, and I'll close the meeting at 8:52. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for